In 1915, an Allied army invades Turkey. It is the Battle at Gallipoli. When the battle was over, the British and French wanted to forget about Gallipoli. But for Australia and New Zealand, the campaign would become a legend. The legend says the British sent the Anzacs to the wrong beach, to a beach they knew nothing about, for a murderous slaughter in the dawn. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. I've come on a journey to Gallipoli to find out what really happened that day.
My career was in military intelligence, and it was a map that started my journey. This map challenged everything I knew about the Anzac landing. I thought they landed without knowing anything about the landing beaches. But look, this map is dated April 20, 1915.
And here are hand-drawn details of enemy defences. An Anzac intelligence officer, someone like me, knew all of these details 5 days before the landing.
I wanted to find the story of how they knew all of this. I found a story of covert intelligence operations, spies, and the use of cutting-edge technology.
The world's first aircraft carrier was at Gallipoli. Aeroplanes detailed the Turkish defences.
Boats will land about 1 mile north of Covert.
Australians planned their own landing. They did things differently to the British. It wasn't at dawn, and it wasn't a bloodbath. It was imaginative, it was bold, and it worked. The real story is different from what most people think.
It's a story that will change the way you think about Gallipoli.
In 1914, thousands of young men volunteer for the war, including, as it happens, my great-grandfather, Charlie White. The men are taken on ships to Europe. They think they're going to fight Germans, because in Europe in 1914, the German and Austrian empires go to war against the Russian, French, and British empires. It is the First World War. The massive Turkish Empire is neutral, but for how long? In the capital, Constantinople, the German Kaiser comes courting the Turkish Sultan. Everything is peaceful in the capital, but the Germans and the Turks have signed a secret military alliance. The gateway to Constantinople is about 500 kilometers away. It's a slim stretch of water called the Dardanelles, and the story of Anzac Day begins here, in a small town called Çanakkale. Çanakkale is the start of my journey.
I've come here to find out what really happened on that day, 20th of April, 1915, Anzac Day. There's an Englishman living here in 1914 named Clarence Palmer. He's the British Vice Consul to Çanakkale.
This is one of only 2 photographs of him. This minor diplomatic official will have an extraordinary influence on the Gallipoli landing. Çanakkale has changed since Clarence Palmer was here, but not the waterfront, where he strolls casually around and he doesn't like what he sees. Turkey is still officially neutral in the war. He notices German officers in Turkish uniform, and together the Germans and Turks are preparing for war.
There is no doubt that the Germans have perpetrated and the Turks connive at the most flagrant violations of neutrality. There are now no fewer than 4 German ships which are flying the Turkish flag.
Clarence Palmer notices young men being conscripted into the Turkish army, like the 16-year-old Adil Şahin.
Seferberlik ilan edildi. İstanbul'da Harbiye Nezareti askeri alma için subayları dört bir yana saldı. Şu tarihten önce doğanlar askere alınacak dediler. Yürüyüş, kültür fizik hareketleri sanki jimnastik gibiydi. Yere yat, ayağa kalk, biraz da uygun adım marş.
This all makes Clarence Palmer very, very angry. So he becomes a spy.
And the information that he records is priceless, because this stretch of water, the Dardanelles, is about to become the most important stretch of water on Earth.
At the mouth of the Dardanelles, the island of Tenedos, where the British have a battle fleet. If war with Turkey comes, they want to steam this fleet up the Dardanelles, through the Narrows, and straight to Constantinople. We know the city as Istanbul. If the British capture this city, they open supply lines to their ally Russia, alter the whole strategic situation, maybe win the war. This city is a glittering prize worth any effort, and the only thing in the way is the Dardanelles.
You can really appreciate the narrowness of the Dardanelles, 1.5 kilometers across. The Allied warships have to squeeze through this gap if they want to fight their way to Constantinople. There is a fort on the other side, and others further along. This is what the Navy is up against, large caliber guns. And there are dozens of them here, up and down the Dardanelles.
Now Clarence Palmer notices the Turks are closing the Narrows. They're laying mines in the sea.
This is a sea mine, a ton of high explosives. They're anchored off the seabed with the mine floating just below the surface, unseen. They are laying in lines across to the other side. No British warship is getting through here.
Now, Clarence Palmer secretly maps the mines. And here's the map. There's the Dardanelles, and that's the town of Çanakkale. And here's the lines of underwater mines.
Clarence Palmer escapes with this priceless information out to the British fleet anchored off the island of Tenedos.
His information is priceless because Britain has just declared war on Turkey. Far out in the Indian Ocean, on the convoy taking the Anzac soldiers to Europe, Reporter Charles Bean hears the news and thinks maybe they're not going to Europe.
News of war being declared on Turkey. We altered course about 7. Shall we be stopped in Egypt?
The Dardanelles is an incredibly busy waterway. And it's here in 1915 the British and the French assemble a massive fleet. Amongst the fleet, Ark Royal, the world's first aircraft carrier, and aboard her, Lieutenant Harry Strain.
She's the first ship to be designed as an aircraft carrier, with an immense hold to accommodate seaplanes with folding wings. We do reconnaissance flights along the coasts and over the forts to determine whether intelligence information about the defences is correct.
The great British and French fleet now tries to push its way through the Dardanelles. They open fire on Çanakkale and the forts guarding the Narrows.
During the bombardment of this fort, a massive shell fired from a British warship punched through this wall, shattered this building, and without exploding, shot 100 meters across this quadrangle. The shell flew across here and buried itself in this wall, again without exploding. And watching all of this from above is Harry Strain in a seaplane from Ark Royal.
I was to fly up and down the straits between the Narrows. I was to act as a sort of commentator, to keep up a running record of the damage done to the various forts. It was easy enough to hit the forts, but to do any good, the guns themselves had to be destroyed. And it was by no means certain that all the guns were damaged or destroyed. I saw both Gaulois and Beauvais badly hit, and both appeared to be in difficulties. Inflexible was hit by something very heavy. Irresistible hit a mine and put her engines out of action. Ocean was ordered to take her in tow, and in closing, struck another mine, and both were lost.
Between the mines in the water and the guns in the forts, 6 battleships are sunk or crippled. It's a complete disaster.
Unless the guns protecting the minefields can be silenced, forcing a passage is too desperate an adventure to be entertained.
What Harry Strain saw was the defeat of the most powerful weapon on Earth, the combined British and French navies. A great Turkish victory. And watching that victory out there is General Sir Ian Hamilton.
A professional soldier, he writes poetry and speaks French, German and Hindi. He's convinced the Navy can't get through the Dardanelles, not without his army landing and destroying the forts.
From what I saw with my own eyes, it is unlikely that the straits will be breached by battleships alone. If my troops are to take part, it must be a deliberate and prepared operation carried out at full strength.
Exactly the same thing occurs to Otto Lehmann von Sanders, the German commander of Turkish forces.
Die Alliierten verstanden wahrscheinlich, dass der Weg nach Konstantinopel nicht ausschließlich durch Aktion auf dem Wasser zu eröffnen ist. Es war mir auch klar, dass wir auf eine große Landung zu rechnen hatten.
Along the length of the Gallipoli Peninsula, the Turks prepare to meet a full-scale British invasion. They now are certain is coming. Anzac soldiers are camped in Egypt. The ships that were carrying them to England were diverted here when Britain declared war on Turkey. In Egypt, amongst Anzac command, the man who drew those details on my map, Major Charles Villiers-Stewart, Anzac intelligence officer. He's 40 years old, a combat veteran. He's on loan from the Indian Army. He's told about the plans for the landing. The men aren't told, only ordered to board trains.
So the train goes down to Alexandria and then onto a troop ship. We had no idea where we were going. And then this friend of mine, he comes in with his Bible. He'd been able to dig it up. And he says to me, "Hey, Bill, look, I think I found the location of the place we're going." So he opens it up, points to a page, and there it is. It's the island of Lemnos.
Lemnos Island is about 80 kilometres from the Gallipoli coast. At Lemnos, British General Ian Hamilton assembles an invasion force, warships, transports, submarines. The Anzacs are ordered to begin training with boats.
They had these ships out in Lemnos Bay, and they had these rope ladders hanging over the side, and we all had our marching gear on, and then we had to get into the boat, and then get out of the boat, and then into the boat, and then get up and down, and up and down. Gee, it's uncomfortable.
Hamilton plans to land these men on the Gallipoli Peninsula. Hamilton's main landing will be British troops to the south. They will advance up the peninsula and towards the forts. The Anzacs will land to the north and advance across the peninsula, also towards the forts. The Anzacs are allocated a section of coastline between a point called Gallipoli and a stone cottage called Fisherman's Hut. And the whole sector is called Z Beach. Responsibility for planning the Anzac landing falls to the Australian General William Bridges. 54 years old, a professional soldier, he started the Royal Military College at Duntroon. His headquarters is aboard the converted cruise liner Minnewaska, anchored in Lemnos Harbour. He gathers his staff to plan the landing on Z Beach.
Anzac is to land near Cape Tepe. The idea seems to be that we are to hold high ground above Fisherman's Hut. Numerous landings will distract the Turks. But once we have established a foothold, the fleet is going to rush through.
Charles Villiers-Stewart's responsibility as intelligence officer is to find out everything he can about Z Beach, and right now, he knows almost nothing.
Air reconnaissance has failed as yet to locate any guns. Z Beach is unprotected.
William Bridges decides to go and take a look at Z Beach. It's a lot easier for us to take a look at Z Beach than it is for Anzac Command. From Gallipoli in the south to Fisherman's Hut in the north, it's 5 kilometres long. That's a huge sector. It's 5 kilometres they know nothing about.
William Bridges and his staff are 1.5 miles off this beach on a warship, observing Z Beach for the first time. They are wearing naval uniforms, so they don't look like army officers conducting a beach reconnaissance, just in case any Turks are watching, which incidentally, plenty are from that knoll there of Ari Banu.
And that's the problem. Far out to sea, Charles Villiers-Stewart can't see into the rugged gullies, can't see what's behind the hills. Just where are the Turkish defences? Are there any? So Charles Villiers-Stewart does something quite novel. The ship is diverted to the island of Tenedos. Tenedos is the base for a squadron of the British Royal Naval Air Service. Charles Sampson is its star. Nicknamed Captain Kettle, he's famous. He once attacked a German submarine by firing his rifle at it from his plane. Charles Villiers-Stewart asks him for a ride. He's given some flying kit and an empty petrol tin, which is what they use as a life preserver should they ditch into the sea, and he's taken aloft for his first aeroplane flight. Charles Villiers-Stewart's first flight is above Z Beach. He has a compass and a pencil and a map nailed to the interior of the cockpit so it won't blow away. He looks down into the hills and gullies, and what he sees changes everything. Sketches and his notes gathered from his flight, he does something extraordinary. He makes a model of Z Beach. And with the information from his flight, he begins to add detail to his model and his map. His map is marked with a grid. Each square is about 3 kilometers in length. These are numbered 223, 224, 225, and so on. These squares are further divided into 25 smaller squares, and these are lettered A, B, C, D. There's no E, F, G, and so on. The whole system is draped across the landscape. The point of Gallipoli is square 211P. Fisherman's Hut is square 237Q. And between them, the 5-kilometre length of Z Beach, where William Bridges needs to find a place to land his men. Charles Villiers-Stewart's map begins to fill. 224G, trenches. 224N, 20 tents. How many Turks to a Turkish tent? 10. That's 200 men right there. At 224S, a 7-gun battery. That's very bad news.
It's guns like these, hidden in the valleys, that is worrying Anzac headquarters. They fire a shell with metal balls designed to detonate in the air, like God's giant shotgun blast. It'll kill anything beneath it. It'll certainly kill a boatload of soldiers rowing for the shore.
William Bridges takes a look at Charles Villiers-Stewart's model and map and realises his men are going to get slaughtered rowing to the beach. So he comes up with a radical idea.
General Hamilton's scheme was that we should land at daybreak
and after a heavy bombardment of the hills and shore by the Navy. Anzac's great desire is to make the Australian attack a simple surprise. They strongly urged upon Hamilton to allow him to land the men before daylight and without any preliminary bombardment.
William Bridges sticks his neck out and does something completely different to the British. His radical idea is to land silently, at night, in the darkness. To prepare for the Gallipoli landings, aerial reconnaissance of Turkish defences now becomes crucial. What appears to be gentle hills when viewed from the sea becomes gun positions when viewed from the air.
Well, about this time, I was told about the proposed landing. So we made every effort to get good photographs and drawings of all possible beaches with the position of any defenses.
This is an aerial photograph of Gallipoli, the southernmost point of Z Beach. The zigzag lines are Turkish trenches. And this is the information that Charles Villiers-Stewart transfers to his map. The photographs and the reports pour into Anzac Command and end up here on Charles Villiers-Stewart's desk.
We've located over 30 guns covering Z Beach. And assuming the Turks can fire 3 rounds a minute, that's 90 rounds a minute. Half an hour to row to the beach, that's 2,700 shrapnel bursts over men rowing in open wooden boats. Most worrying of all, here, 203T, 700 tents hidden in an olive grove.
This is the olive grove, where Charles Villiers-Stewart observes 700 tents. That's 7,000 armed Turkish soldiers, 6 kilometers away on a good road from where the Anzacs are to row their boats ashore.
Charles Villiers-Stewart also identifies an entire Turkish division, some 15,000 men, in a small village called Bogali.
This is the village of Bogali. This is where the Turkish division is. It's 6 kilometers from Z Beach. So William Bridges knows he's got 1.5 to 2 hours to seize his objectives before he's hit by 15,000 men.
His objective is to capture the third ridge, the high ground above Z Beach, and now his men have to do it quickly.
The boats will land about 1 mile north of Cape Tepe. The first objective will be the occupation of a ridge stretching from square 212I to point 971 in 238.
The man chosen to lead the first wave is Colonel Ewan Sinclair McLagan. It's his men who will hit the beach first.
3rd Brigade is the covering force. We land at night between Cape Tepe and Fisherman's Hut. Seize the beach, disabling enemy guns. Our objective is the third ridge.
April 23rd moonset, the time the moon goes down, is 2:02 a.m. Dawn is 4:59. That gives your men 3 hours to get to the beach before dawn.
I do thank you for the great honor of having this job to do with my brigade. But if we do find the Turks holding these ridges in any strength, I honestly don't think you'll ever see the 3rd Brigade again.
Go along with you.
Colonel Sinclair McLagan isn't the only one having doubts about the landing. Ian Hamilton, after viewing the photographs of the Turkish defences, now knows what he's up against.
The photographs make it all too clear that the Turks have not let the grass grow under their feet. The peninsula is better defended than it was.
Ian Hamilton confides to Charles Sampson that he expects to lose half his men in the landing. He expects a bloodbath.
I was greatly impressed by Sir Ian's remark that he expected to lose nearly 50% in casualties.
Charles Sampson is ordered to take aloft a very special passenger. The commander of a British submarine, Lieutenant Commander Theodore Brodie. He's been ordered to dive under the minefields mapped by Clarence Palmer, get through the Narrows, and attack Turkish shipping. Charles Sampson takes him on a flight over the Narrows.
I took up Lieutenant Commander Brodie, captain of submarine E-15, taking him at rather low altitude up the Dardanelles, as he had been detailed to attempt the first pass of the Narrows in his submarine. I must say, I preferred my job to his, and I rather felt it would be the last time I would see him.
Theodore Brodie's submarine was caught in the treacherous currents of the Narrows. He was forced to ground and fired upon. This is a Turkish photograph of the grounded submarine. The shell hole you can see through the conning tower cut poor Theodore Brodie in half. Stuck fast on the shore, the crew surrender. A Turkish intelligence officer reads a list of her crew and finds Clarence Palmer. The ex-diplomat comes spy from the British consulate in Çanakkale. What he was doing on board the submarine is a complete mystery. In Çanakkale, all that remains of the British consulate in 1915 is a small cemetery.
This is the grave of Theodore Brodie, the commander of the British submarine. Now, our old friend Clarence Palmer is brought before the Turkish garrison commander, Cevat Bey, who is absolutely delighted to see him because he intends to hang him.
Clarence Palmer thinks about his own hanging and then turns traitor.
Please, don't hang me. I know about the coming invasion. I can give you the details.
Thanks to Clarence Palmer, Otto Lieben von Sanders now has Hamilton's landing plan and the time to prepare his defenses.
Es war gerade genug Zeit, die wesentlichen Anordnungen vervollständigen.
Lieben von Sanders gains even more time. The weather delays the landings. William Bridges is counting on darkness to get his men ashore, and each day's delay means the moon sets later.
Another delay for a further 24 hours.
Each day's delay means 30 minutes less darkness for his men to row ashore. For Charles Villiers-Stewart, the delay means the men might be seen rowing to the beach. He knows what's waiting for them, and it's personal. He's landing with a second wave. Lemnos Harbour and the warships assemble to invade the Gallipoli Peninsula, the greatest seaborne invasion yet seen. The Anzacs are ordered to wear the British cap, not the Australian slouch hat. To the Turks, they will look like British troops.
It's a great gamble, the whole thing, really.
or of boys who began their life on the Murray, or in a backyard in Wagga or Burke or Surrey Hills, will be left lying in Turkey.
Ian Hamilton confides to his diary.
Death grins at my elbow. I cannot get him out of my thoughts. He is fed up with the old and the sick. Only the flower of the flock will serve him now. For God has started a celestial spring cleaning, and our star is to be scrubbed bright with the blood of our bravest and best.
Hamilton is landing British troops on 5 beaches on Cape Helles. The beaches are codenamed S, W, X, Y, and at the tip, V Beach. To the north, the Anzacs are landing on Z Beach. And further north, Hamilton sends a fleet to a place called Bulair for a special mission. The fleet opens fire on the shore. They lower boats full of soldiers, but the boats don't actually land. It's all a deception, a fake landing, designed to make Lehman von Sanders think it's a real landing. He is completely fooled. He keeps 2 divisions, 20,000 men on standby, ready to repel a landing that never comes. But it isn't just Ian Hamilton who fools him. It's our old friend, Clarence Palmer. He told Lehman von Sanders the fake northern landing was the main landing. He lied. And maybe that's one of the reasons he was on the submarine in the first place.
Off this coast, out to sea, below the horizon, the Anzac ships are waiting for the moon to set.
It was dark. I think we got up about 1 or 2 a.m. And we got a hot feed. It was bully beef or something like that. But no, we're in full marching outfit. Overcoats, goodness knows what.
After the moon has set, and in total darkness, the warships steam silently towards this shore.
The men clamber into rowboats, and the rowboats are towed to shore by steamboats. Close to shore, the rowboats are released. And the men begin to row to the beach. Above said beach is the 16-year-old Adil Şahin.
Onbaşı şöyle seslendi. Kalkın, uyanın, garip bir şeyler oluyor. Nöbetçi aşağıdaki kumsalı işaret etti. Yüzlercesi teknelerinden kıyıya çıkıyordu. Siperlere girdik ve şafak sökerken savaş başladı. Filikalar gelmeye devam ediyordu. Ve kıyıya daha çok adam çıkarmaya da devam ettiler.
This is where the 16-year-old Adil Şahin fired upon Australian troops coming ashore. They landed either side of this point, down here to my left and to my right. Did the Australians land on the correct beach? Well, people have been arguing about that since 5 minutes past 4 on Sunday, the 25th of April, 1915. Orders dated 21st of April, 1915, 4 days before the landing, direct 7th Battalion to land in square 224G. Now, here is square 224, and here is G. See this bump? There it is here, Ari Banu, the northernmost point of Anzac Cove. So, we have orders to land here.
Charles Finney Stewart arrives with the second wave. William Bridges has
4,500 men ashore in tactical surprise, in darkness, before the dawn. The men have already climbed these slopes, and this beachhead has been taken in 20 minutes.
By the time Charles Bean arrives, there's 8,500 men ashore. This is a photograph of the beach that morning. There's one body on the sand.
Of course there's been casualties. The Turks have been shelling this beach since dawn. But there's no massacre at dawn. Not here, and not on this beach. For that, we have to go to the British landing on Cape Helles.
60 minutes after the Australians land silently in darkness on Z Beach, warships begin pounding the British landing beaches about 20 kilometres to the south. Pounding a landing beach is a good idea if you can kill the enemy. But if you don't, you've just woken him up and told him to get ready, which is exactly what the British have done.
This is the fortress above V Beach. And the Turks here are alert, prepared, and are waiting for boats to land on this shore in daylight. This is V Beach. Then the Turks see the most extraordinary thing. Out to sea is a very large steamer, and she's coming towards this shore for a collision against those rocks.
She's the River Clyde, and she rams herself onto the rocks. She's got 2,000 British soldiers stuffed inside her. In broad daylight, they pour out of the ship. Flying overhead is Charles Sampson.
The River Clyde was fast ashore. The beach and the water close to the shore were strewn with bodies. It was an appalling sight for us to look down at from our safe position in the air. The sea, for a distance of about 50 yards from the beach, was absolutely red with blood.
This is a photograph taken from the bow of the River Clyde that morning. The survivors who have made it ashore are sheltering under a sandy ledge.
This is where the few survivors are sheltering beneath this ledge of sand. On River Clyde, 1,000 soldiers can't and won't get off until the cover of darkness.
Up at Z Beach, the Anzacs haven't captured the vital high ground above the beach.
Steep terrain. The gullies were really steep. It was hard work. We didn't see any sign of Turks at all. It was just a matter of going for your life. We all got mixed up. We were all over the place. The higher up you got, the worse it got.
We got all the way to the top and they told us just to wait. They sent out some scouts.
The worst thing that happens to Anzac this morning is they run into this man, Mustafa Kemal, the most capable battlefield commander of the whole campaign. And this is his house. It's 5:30 in the morning and his telephone is ringing. He realizes that the key to the whole thing is the high ground above Z Beach. So he gathers his entire force and he hits Anzac with everything he's got.
William Bridges has been ashore since 7:30 a.m. He now pulls his men into a tight perimeter to meet the Turkish onslaught.
They're holding a Turkish division, stopping it from interfering with the main British landing to the south. But the British landing is easily halted. The fury of the Turkish counterattack stops the Anzacs here. The battle for Gallipoli is pretty much doomed from the first day.
We had to report the line held by the Anzac Corps. There wasn't one, and the small bodies of men who advanced to various positions in the cliffs were far too busy to signal to aircraft. The seaplane was in a pig-headed mood and would not climb beyond 1,400 feet. As the hill was 971, that left some 430 feet between the machine and Turkish soldiers. You cannot always miss at that distance.
Terrible day turns to night, and William Bridges knows the Anzacs can't reach their objectives. The landing is a failure.
They're hanging onto this ridge by their fingernails, their backs to the sea. General Bridges recommends withdrawal, evacuate.
Ian Hamilton considers the request to evacuate Z Beach, and he says, no.
You have gone through the difficult business. All you have to do now is dig, dig, dig, until you are safe.
Above Anzac Cove, where the men are ordered to dig, are three ridges. The first, they overran. The second, they held. And in the distance, the third, the ridge they would never hold.
See that white memorial? Well, below it is Z Beach. Let's see what the Anzacs never saw. The Dardanelles, the Narrows, and on the far side, Chanakali. They would never capture those forts, and the warships would never steam through and capture Constantinople. Let's see how far the Anzacs got. That white memorial, that's Lone Pine. That's how far they got. And after 8 months of bitter fighting, they finally took General Bridges' advice and left. Once again in the dead of night.
But William Bridges wasn't around to see it. 3 weeks after landing, he was hit by a sniper. He was evacuated, but it was hopeless. When King George heard, he had William Bridges knighted. He died the next day. His funeral was held in Melbourne. Of the nearly 60,000 Australians who would die in the war, he was the only one brought home, the only one buried in Australia. Clarence Palmer survived the war in a Turkish prison camp. He went quietly back to the diplomatic service and never did anything exciting again.
What happened here is the single most sacred and controversial day in the way Australians think about themselves. Look, the British did not send us here to be slaughtered. Casualties were comparatively light. It wasn't a dawn landing. And overall, it was the correct beach. The landing was imaginatively planned by Australian officers. So, if we're going to have a myth, an Anzac myth, let's get it right.
Three weeks after landing, Charles Villiers-Stewart was sketching Turkish positions.
Here is the grave of Charles Villiers-Stewart, buried on this slope, before the sea, and in front of the cove that he overflew 11 days before the landing.
He was an intelligence officer, the same job I once had. Perhaps that's why I'm drawn to his story. Sending soldiers into danger is a terrible responsibility. It's why the real story of Anzac Day is important. And for me, it's personal. This is the grave of my great-grandfather, Charlie White.